So this is the first time in 4 years that I have had stage fright, and it's at my own conference. It's actually really terrifying. So I'm really glad to be here today. I'm a co-founder of Opscode, and obviously I helped get this conference started with a lot of other people. This is going to be a talk about culture and culture hacking. And Opscode and Velocity are probably my two biggest culture hacks. But I'm going to focus a lot on what you guys need in order to be productive hacking the cultures that you're going to go back to when this conference is over. Just a couple of quick things. So hopefully one of these three slides will sound familiar. Either you're this girl who tested, it worked fine, but it's Op's problem now. Or you're this sysadmin. I was that sysadmin. Or you're this dev or business person who is making Steve very sad. So the interesting thing about being here together is this is an event where when we talk about the various components that make up performance and operations, we talk a lot about technology, but like Allspa and I will both say, really probably to an absurd level, it's really culture. And so you're going to spend or you've already spent a day and you'll have another half day of getting this injected into you. This is the original DevOps love poster that they put up. You will have learned all of Steve's 28 rules. How many know all of Steve's 28 rules? Raise your hands. What about the 4 secret ones that he can't ever tell you? He's sworn to secrecy. Ooh. You have to ask him about that. You will definitely have automated all of the things. I hope you use Chef, but you might use something else to do it. How many here believe in metrics at this point? Raise your hands. Okay, put your hands down. Now, who doesn't believe in metrics? Who thinks that that's a stupid idea? You shouldn't measure stuff. Anyone? Okay, you. So you'll go back and you'll be like, oh man, our metrics totally suck right now, but we can use Ganglia, we can use Theo's stuff with Circonus, it is going to be incredible. Some of you are going to begin continuously deploying code before it is even written. Like it is 10 deploys a day? No, continuous, meaning it just comes from the future. You will deploy Allspa's code to Etsy before they even think of it. That's how cool you're going to be. If you've ever heard any one of my people talk, you're going to think about, you know what? We're not even afraid of a game day. I will press that button. I will receive the candy. So that candy, that thing does not dispense candy, by the way. It's actually an emergency power off button. Some people are confused by that. It's weird. I don't know. The most important thing that you should take away from Velocity is an idea, which is we've kind of vectored towards the right shape, the right culture for what is effective to survive and thrive on the web. It's sort of a function of organizational constraints in many ways, in the same way that a bird's wing is optimized for flight, a bat's wing is optimized for flight. We kind of know generally what the operations culture should be. And you're going to have this kind of deeply inside you. You're going to be super pumped. And then you are going to go back to the office, which will suck. Unless you work for Opscode, in which case it's awesome. So you're going to go back, and you are going to know stuff that is going to change your life and change everybody else's life. And the very first thing that you're going to want to do is completely shake everyone up. Be like, oh, we're doing it all wrong, and we've got to immediately make all these changes. And then a little while later, you're going to send me this note. I get about 50 of these every conference cycle, and it's basically I talked to people and they said there's absolutely no way this will work, or I tried to implement and now I'm on some kind of personal improvement plan or something. There's a big outage. I don't know what happened. The compliance people got involved. And so the kind of sucky part is that changing culture actually takes time. And I've gotten good at hacking culture mostly because I've made some really, really stupid mistakes, which I'm going to tell you about. And the biggest being a belief that, hey, we're engineers, we're operators, we're people that care about infrastructure, and the desire to just rip it all out is super fun. Like, you don't want to be stuck with the cruft. Actually, sorry, anyone, do you like being stuck with cruft, Mr. No Metrics over there? I got my eye on you. So I, in my career over the past decade, have had a history of choosing battles extremely poorly. It's like almost weapons grade. I was the guy that always said no to the cool new stuff, and then once I got excited about actually saying yes to things, I pretty consistently would fight over the stupidest things imaginable. One of my favorite things that I tried to do was kill EC2 in its infancy, because I was an ops guy and it was a waste of resources and a security threat is how I perceived it. So I've been the Dr. No guy, but I've also fought every single one of the stupid large organizational battles you can and lost almost all of them. And one day I realized Jesse's rule of happiness and survival, which is do not fight stupid, focus on where you can make more awesome. And when I say that, and I think about you guys going back, for those of you that are in organizations that are making change quickly right now, it's great. For those of you that aren't and you're unhappy, the job boards are overflowing. And the interesting thing to know is that you don't need to be stuck somewhere where you're fighting stupid. There is plenty of room for more awesome for every single one of you. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about that. Don't go back and quit your jobs. But the interesting thing is that we are in the middle of this massive change, which it makes all of our lives better. So just remember that. Here is how you actually change culture effectively. So the first, and again, this irritates the crap out of me, is you start small. You start at the least common, most likely to succeed denominator. And I'm going to go through this as a list. I'm going to give you some examples, and then I'm going to give you the hacks for them. The second thing, this is particularly hard for people who are sort of harder core engineers who do not socialize well. You need to create champions. And by this, when you're pushing these changes, like if you're trying to talk about how awesome what Etsy's doing is, or any of the new things that you've learned about that you want to import into your environments, it's going to need to come from more than you. You don't want to be that one person who's trying to kind of be the mascot for that. I was the mascot for availability in one of my jobs. It was a terrible thing to do to myself. And the thing that you gain power from doing is getting a lot of people excited about what you're seeing. And that means getting them to see the world with them using whatever the new cool thing you want to implement is, having their life be better, them feeling better, being more popular, and getting raises and all kinds of other stuff. Using metrics to build confidence. So one of the things we did early on with Velocity was we made sure that lots of the large companies published useful data that you can use and take back to your executives to build a case for why you should be able to do something. So if you go back through, you'll see like, this is the cost of an outage. This is the cost of 1 microsecond of latency. And you can use that in order to build cases. The Shopzilla example that they used showed like a huge improvement in revenue as a result of improving front-side performance. So you're going to need to build a language of business metrics, and Mandy Walls is going to talk a little bit about this later today in some detail. She's an MBA. I'm a firefighter, so your mileage may vary. But you want to use metrics in order to prove your case and, more importantly, allow others to subscribe to it. You want to celebrate successes, and I'll talk a little bit about this. And you want to do this one thing which people get a little weird when I say this. You want to exploit compelling events. So when the site goes down and everything is broken for a really long time and everyone's yelling at each other, you have this unique opportunity to change your organization. And the good news is that those kind of things happen all the time. And so you have so many chances to say, you know what we really need is a new incident management program, or better metrics, or I think we should try Ganglia out, or whatever it is. And so exploiting compelling events is a super trick, which we'll go into. For me, where I applied this first was during my time at Amazon, where I worked on this project called the Availability Program. And I created something called Game Day. How many of you have heard of Game Day as just the phrase or word? Okay, some. So it's been spreading out more and more. The other, like Netflix has a version of this, Chaos Monkey. It's pretty cool. Basically, Game Day is an exercise where we injected large-scale faults into critical components of the infrastructure. In some cases, pressing the big red button, which is pretty fun. How many of you have had a major data center failure, by the way? I love this question. Raise your hands. Yeah, OK. So, everyone, basically. So it's part of a larger discipline. It's not new to us, this type of work. But it's definitely something that scares the living crap out of every single person you talk about. So you say, hey guys, we know that we want to be resilient to a single data center failure or multiple data center failures. And to get there right now, we're going to fail one, just a little bit. We're going to light a little fire, and we're going to see what happens. We're going to see how people work and perform. So if you had started with the full-scale exercise, if this little kid had been pushing against a full-scale fire hose on his first day, they pushed back with about 90 pounds of force, he'd be flying around, and it'd be a big disaster, and it'd make the news and everything else, and no one would be happy about that. So you got to start small, start something achievable. In my case with that program, starting with the smallest groups of developers who were receptive to the ideas and who probably weren't going to destroy everything when we ran the exercise. As you get some early successes, you want to build on trust and safety. And this little girl is such a badass. Like that person is going to be a firefighter someday. So when you make these little structured exercises, you start to build a competency, and you're able to demonstrate your value to people. It doesn't matter what the program is. Again, if you're going to continuous integration, continuous deployment, if you're actually finally implementing source control on your infrastructure environments, if you're doing that big JavaScript refactor that you said that you were going to do 4 years ago, and now you're finally getting to it, or if Stubbornella is yelling at you because your CSS actually makes her cry. Whatever that project is, you want to start small. You build up, you get some early successes, and then you begin creating these champions, as I described. So people like being smart, people like being in the know, people like having special knowledge, people like kicking ass and getting things done generally. And what I've found is that when you can get people excited about what's going on, and show that what you're doing makes a measurable impact, you can start to spread that out virally by having them be pretty excited. These kids, go back to the kindergarten and they say, you know what? I played with the fire engine and I did all the things. They're evangelizing how cool firefighting is to other people in the same exact way that I know every single one of the developers that I worked with went back and said, you know what I really love is availability engineering. And I love doing these resiliency. They did not do this, by the way. This is a lie. But they, to some extent, they did. And then you move up to a little bit more training. You increase the bar. And so you say, you know what? We've gotten you to this place where you kind of know what you're doing. And so now we're going to run full-scale exercises. We're actually going to burn a house down. We're going to take a data center down. We're going to push something into production slightly faster than we have before. And we're going to begin measuring that and seeing the impacts on a team level, but where you're able to compare one team to another. Over time, you're able to see the deltas between performance. So this is a heat map on a city showing where fire engines did not meet their response time obligations. It's pretty clear where you don't want to live, and it's pretty clear where there's problems. You can do this in the same way when you're presenting a case inside of a business about what you want to do. You say, look, when we have people that went through this program, we had way faster response times, much shorter MTTR, and you know what? People were happier because they could deploy stuff on a regular interval. You want to celebrate those successes. So this is me. You can see me there. This is after a shift and where we put a fire out. It's pretty fun. And what's interesting is that positivity ends up being a viral adoption tool. Colin Powell said that optimism is a force multiplier, and it absolutely is. When people find, we're seeing this with cloud adoption right now. Oh, you mean I can just type in, get an instance, and deploy it? That makes people's lives so much better so quickly that it's impossible to repress, and suddenly there's a big buzz spreading around it. And the reason that it feels so good is because they had that early success and they keep on getting more power. And then finally, you can exploit those compelling events to do the hard work. So most of you probably don't know this, but the way we got fire sprinklers is lots of people died. And there was all kinds of resistance to putting sprinklers into buildings. But finally, it got bad enough that we got a national standards body put together, and people were willing to spend the money, willing to spend the time, willing to do all the building and everything else in order to make things safer. Now, they couldn't do it prior to that terrible, compelling event, but they were willing to do it afterward. And so when you're looking to make larger changes, or you're looking for those moments, this is how you do that. This is how you do a big, scary program like powering off data centers. This is what gives you the cultural currency to make a big change. Which I covered this. So just to review, start small, create champions, use metrics, celebrate your successes, and exploit compelling events. Here are the hacks. Starting small. So the reason that starting small works, the reason that doing a very small project works, is because it isn't a threat to the establishment within your organization. It's easy to ignore, it's easy to pass off, it's under the somebody else's problem field if you're a Douglas Adams fan. When you're first building this and you're super excited and you encounter that first person that kind of wants to do battle with you and they're like, no, we totally can't ever do that because of compliance, or we've got this weird Sarbanes-Oxley requirement, or PCI DSS, or our security needs are so unique that we could never use JavaScript in that way, or whatever it is, right? So the trick is to just call it an experiment. Minimize. Now, that's not what you actually want to do, because you're going to be running everything in production 100% within months. But just say, no, it's just a short-term experiment. Don't tell them the truth, because it is an experiment. It might not work. It'll work. So that's how you minimize the risk to the people that are going to do battle with you. Creating champions. This is an area that I kind of suck at. One of the first things that I am terrible at, and I imagine most of you are, is you like getting heads down, and you do a bad job of getting your boss on board with what you're doing. What you really want, your first champion you want, is to get your boss on board. You want to say, hey, you know what, we're going to fix this thing. It's been broken forever. It's going to be great. Here's what I need to do it. I'm going to take a little bit of risk. And you want to get them on board so that they can represent and be that first champion for you as you begin delivering. At Amazon, I was lucky. I had Werner as my executive sponsor for one of my projects, and he was awesome because he would come in, he's a giant, and basically say, you have to do what Jesse says. And I loved that. And I try to do that now as an executive at my own company when I'm trying to support people in the projects that they're trying to do. But the interesting thing here is it's easy to forget this, and it's easy to have that weird antagonistic relationship where your boss is like, well, what's it going to do? You got to flip them, and if you're not able to flip them, don't fight stupid, make more awesome, go somewhere else. This one's a little trickier. Give everyone else the credit at this stage. Like, if you get a developer up and running with continuous integration and deployment, or you implement some vastly improved front-end library, The best thing you possibly can do is spread the love as far away from you as possible so that as many people are like, you know what, I totally did that, it was awesome, and I want to do it again and again. At Opscode, we do this really clearly with our community. It's one of the best ways of activating people. We're always talking about what everyone else is doing. We make our contributions. We try to be quite humble about it. This has been a huge force multiplier for us, and it will work for you every time. The last thing is, while you're giving everyone the credit, give out special status. So Google totally nailed this early on with the SREs. They gave out bomber jackets. They did like special other kinds of coats. They really like coats, patches. Like they had like Velcro patches. Anything you can do to make people stand out because they're a part of your program. It's funny how little effort it requires to make them part of your tribe, on your team, and advocating for you consistently. It's a super hack. Make sure that people with special status brag about it, but also maintain an air of exclusivity. So it's not a program that's open to everyone, so it's only like it's a pilot, blah, blah, blah. And so create a little scarcity early on. It's the best marketing you'll ever do for whatever it is you're trying to do inside of your organization. Metrics. So let me tell you the first thing not to do. I have a terrible history of, I love emailing metrics decks out to people without context. Because I'm like, I saw a thing, it's super awesome. And that is the way to lose your champions right away, particularly when it's like the impending doom deck, which I would title things like that. I still do that from time to time. But the thing to understand is that humans really need numbers to glom onto, to compare with other numbers. It makes people feel really safe. So find a number that makes sense. Mean time to deployment. Uptime, if that makes sense. It probably doesn't at this stage. Time for a developer time taken for a developer to go from typing in commit to deployment, because that's lost money right there, right? Like code that's written and not deployed is wasted money. Find a number that supports your change, and then use it ruthlessly. So you're going to show value. You're going to say, look, this thing that we did, this cultural change or this technical change we made has incredible value. Here's what it does. And then later, it's going to end up being used as a weapon, so you should anticipate this. So you'll have one half of the organization who's using the new thing and deploying software in 6 minutes, or sub 4 second, or sub 2 second, or sub 1 second, first page load times. And then you'll have this moment where they're the superstars, and then anybody that doesn't do that is a jackass. And so just anticipate that that's going to come. So be prepared to use it ruthlessly. The last thing is tell your story with data. I'm a big fan of Hans Rosling. You have to narrate the data so people can understand it. So when you shave off a couple of milliseconds off of a load time, or do some other really powerful, transformative thing for user experience, don't just say we shaved 7 seconds off. Take a narration of a couple of sessions. Show lots of different graphs. Make it a nice printed artifact that you can hand around. Again, this is how you get that currency where people will believe in you, because they can look at it and they could go, wow, that's amazing. How did you do that? And the answer is, well, one thing is that we're actually able to deploy the code that we write, or we're actually able to make changes, which we weren't able to do for 6 months. So you can start working on this in 6 months, or maybe you'll make this change. But a story told with data provides a truly compelling way to force people to see the light, and it gives them something to hold on to that makes them feel safe. And that is the most important thing you're going to need as this sort of thing spreads out, and you run into the resistors who show up and they're like, no way, we can never do that. Well, here's this story. What's your story? No? Is that your story? Like, is that how you want to be remembered for your contributions here, is you said no a lot? I hope not. So, funny story. So at Amazon, I said no so much that I signed the launch posters with no, and then a little squiggle, which is my signature. So if you're ever over there interviewing, or you work at Amazon and you see like an older launch poster and you see a big no, that's me. Don't be that guy. The celebrating successes thing. So this is telling that powerful story. You really want to get people in, you want to pull them in, you want to say, I can't believe how much better it was now that we've used this particular technology. At Opscode, we do a lot of this with our customer case studies. And we do that predominantly so that we can help people see the value of what we're doing. In your case, like if you need help, email me. I'm happy to help you craft that internally. But what we do as a community right now is we're doing really nothing but a lot of storytelling. We're talking about what's happening. A lot of the tools that are coming out are great, but it's all culture first. So be prepared to tell a powerful story and use other ones, all the videos that are available and everything else. Always be positive about people and how they overcame the problem. So people are always good even if they're terrible. Do not attack people individually, as tempting as it is, because what happens is you balkanize the people that would be able to come and help you. So it should not be about the people who created the problem. They had a reason why they created the problem. There was something in that system, some constraint that they were trying to live with, just like you're now trying to overcome a constraint. But feel free to attack the problem itself and the underlying constraint, or at least ask why you care about that at all. The last thing on celebrating successes is, and this is frustrating when you've been a person who's been pushing an agenda for a long time and trying to move a large body of people over to your side, you have to leave room for people to come around. So I found early on in my career and sort of trying to make big changes that I'd be pretty mad when you'd be arguing with someone for a year about why you should do something different. And at the end of it, there was so much weirdness between you that it became hard for them to actually admit that you were right. The best possible outcome when you're taking the things that you're learning here and you're exporting them to the larger world is this. It is that they can flip to your side without even knowing that it happened. It's just the simplest, most obvious, clear thing. It is the right thing by default. And that is truly winning. There's a great book called Crucial Conversations and Crucial Confrontations, which it's woo-woo in some ways, but not. I recommend it. And it talks a lot about how to discuss this sort of conflict with people. But don't fight stupid. Don't create it by needing to be right all the time. Give that credit away early. So the last thing is compelling events. So I said before, just wait and you will have an opportunity to create a compelling event, to exploit a compelling event well, I'll get there in a second. You beat me to it, man. All right, the surprise is ruined. Stuff breaks all the time and you can use it, but more importantly, there are all these things that are used against us all the time to say no, to block things, to do really wasteful work. And the best possible use of an internal compliance mandate that you're all going to suffer through is a way of being like, hey, you know what? We could do that while we do continuous integration and deployment. We could do that while we improve the front-end user experience. And I know a lot of people who have been extremely successful in subverting what should be a terrible process and turning it into a great opportunity for change. Cloud has provided this. So how many CEOs and CIOs are like cloud now? Raise your hands. Oh, wow, a blessed few of you. I love it. Anyway, these types of migrations, seasonal scaling, whatever it is, these provide these great opportunities to be like, you know what, let's do it a little bit differently this time. And you should use those to the best of your ability. When it comes, it's not I told you so. Like when the dev pipeline finally breaks down and you're like, you know what, you should have been using Git instead of that other horrible thing. Don't do that. You can do that with your friends and be like, I told them so. But honestly, the most powerful thing is just asking, what do we do now? And again, leaving them that room to come around to you, because you'll find that people just glom on and say, you know what, I love that. I want things to be better too. Almost nobody actually wants things to be as shitty as they can be. be inside large organizations. Almost nobody. There are some people that totally love it. I don't understand those people. I do encounter them from time to time. The last thing to understand on the compelling event thing is, so this is one of Jessica Hagee's graphs. So opportunity increases with level of upheaval. So the bigger the outage, the bigger the thing that broke, the better chance you have of making sweeping changes inside of the organization, because people are suddenly receptive to them in a way that they would never have been before. I'm going to talk about one last thing, permission. I'm a get forgiveness, not permission kind of guy. And most of you, if you're here, are probably somewhat in the same boat. I had a profound lesson about this, which really shaped the way that I approached organizational systems and dynamics during Hurricane Katrina. I was deployed as a task force leader in Hurricane Katrina. It's another very long story. But there was a fascinating case study called the new Waveland Cafe. And the new Waveland Cafe was staffed by anarchists. And FEMA desperately wanted, so FEMA will call them the enterprise, and the anarchists being maybe the velocity community. FEMA's like, well, who is in charge here, right? And the anarchists would literally yell at the same time, either nobody or no one's in charge. And so then FEMA would be like, you have to leave, and we've got to set up a shelter, like ignoring completely that there were thousands of people being served hot meals right there in front of them. This is one of the craziest things ever. But their process and their permission system and everything else said that they had to be within the system conforming, and the anarchists refused to be a part of the system that gave any single individual more authority than the other. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And like it was really frustrating. And there was this guy with one of the major emergency management agencies who simply said, great, let's make them all site directors. And so then when FEMA would come and say, who's in charge here? Someone would say, I'm a site director. And then they would give them supplies and materials, and and it worked incredibly well. They ended up getting to about 20,000 people a day that they were serving. It was amazing. It's a unique story. But there's a lesson here. This is a picture of a very tiny fragment of it. So those are FEMA-provided medical supplies and a supermarket that they built that was free because they didn't believe in money. So it was a little weird there. But as long as FEMA kept on bringing in stuff, it worked great. It was really cool. The interesting thing about this as a lesson for me was most of the time when people are saying no, what they really are saying is, I don't know how to say yes. And you find that when people have some reason or a belief where they're trying to do the right thing, oftentimes you can hack it just by finding a way to do something slightly different. One of these examples, and then I'm out of time, is most companies have a wiki or an internal documentation tool. I find that simply documenting your authority in that tool is a great way of granting yourself authority over a particular project. And so I recommend using titles like czar or even master of disaster, which was what my business card read at Amazon. And it was appropriate to me, and it gave me a lot of leeway, but I just typed it into a form one day, and then it stuck. But the point here is that the permission that you guys need in order to go out and actually do crazy awesome stuff in your organizations and overcome a lot of the stupid really is just going to happen because you will it to be so. And then the occasional obstructions that you run into are usually overcomeable with, a little creative engineering and maybe a badge that says site director. And that's what it means to not be fighting stupid and to make more awesome. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here.